Have you ever felt it? That quiet, persistent sense that no matter how busy you keep yourself, no matter how many goals you chase, or how many people surround you, something essential is still missing. You're not in crisis. You're functioning. You wake up, go to work, fulfill your obligations. Maybe you even have a decent job, a family that loves you, a stable routine. And yet every morning, there's a weight in your chest, a kind of silent emptiness, like your life is unfolding on a screen, and you're just a silent observer, trapped behind the glass. You may have labeled it anxiety. Maybe a doctor called it depression. Maybe they gave you something to numb it. But what if that discomfort wasn't an error to fix? What if it was a message from within? Carl Jung, one of the most influential thinkers in psychology, believed that this type of suffering isn't pathology. A deep voice from the soul, breaking through the silence, demanding you remember who you are. And the real question isn't why you feel this way. It's whether you're finally ready to stop running and start listening. What if your pain isn't here to hurt you? What if it's here to wake you up? Carl Jung believed that what we call mental illness is often not a malfunction. It's the psyche's way of saying, this isn't working anymore. Anxiety, emptiness, that dull ache you carry inside. They're not meaningless. They're signals from the soul, urgent, encoded, and deeply personal. They are warnings that something in your life has drifted too far from your truth. Jung said, neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering, meaning when we avoid the pain that could transform us, we end up suffering in ways that only numb us. Think about this. You go to work. You meet deadlines. You smile at people. You check every box. But inside, you're shrinking. You feel like you're watching your own life play out from behind a thick, invisible wall. Eventually, you reach a breaking point. You go to the doctor. You say you're anxious. You can't sleep. You feel disconnected, and you don't know why. After 15 minutes, if that, they hand you a prescription. Done. You walk out with a diagnosis. But no one asks the real question. What's happening inside you that made your soul go silent? This is what Jung warned us about. This world doesn't heal people. It manages their symptoms like broken machinery. You're expected to stay productive, keep moving, keep performing, even if you're emotionally collapsing on the inside. Because the system doesn't want to heal you. It wants to keep you functional. That's why medication is offered as a first step. Because it helps you endure a life your soul was never designed to survive. And so, we normalize the unbearable. We smother the soul's fire alarm, mistaking its siren for a defect instead of a warning. But what if your anxiety isn't a chemical imbalance? What if it's your soul whispering, this life, this rhythmus, no longer mine? Jung believed that symptoms are sacred, not problems to eliminate, but symbols to interpret. If you're feeling numb, maybe you've abandoned what really matters to you. If you're restless, maybe you've outgrown the role you're playing. If you're sad, maybe something inside you is grieving a self you never gave a chance to live. We're not taught to see pain this way. We're taught to override it, push through, toughen up, move on. But that just buries the truth deeper. And the deeper it goes, the more it hurts when it finally returns. Because pain doesn't go away. It waits. It waits for a moment when you're quiet enough to hear it. And when that moment comes, when the noise fades, and all that's left is the silence within, you'll realize something important. Your pain has been trying to protect you, trying to guide you, trying to bring you back to the parts of yourself you forgot. But to hear that message, you have to stop numbing it. You have to stop treating pain as a malfunction, because it's not. It's intelligence. It's language. It's life trying to correct its course. You don't need to be fixed. You need to be heard. And that starts with a single question. Not for your doctor, not for your boss, not for anyone else, just for you. What if my pain is telling me the truth? We were never taught to listen to pain, only how to silence it and keep running. But what if the real dysfunction isn't inside you, but in the world that told you to ignore yourself? Let's talk about that next. If you're feeling lost, disconnected, or constantly at odds with yourself, pause for a moment, because the problem might not be inside you. The problem might be the environment that shaped you. Carl Jung understood this with rare clarity. He saw that much of our suffering doesn't come from within, but from the unnatural ways we're forced to live. We grow up in a culture that worships appearance, but ignores essence, that rewards performance, but punishes reflection. From a young age, we're handed a script. Be good, follow the rules, get the grades, pick the safe job, keep your emotions in check. You're trained to construct a life that photographs well, even if it feels like a prison on the inside. And so you adapt. You learn how to smile when you're hurting. You master the art of applause without ever revealing your real self. You learn how to survive by becoming someone you're not. That's not a personal failure. That's programming. Education systems teach you how to follow, not how to think. They prioritize memorization over meaning, compliance over curiosity. Social media amplifies this even further. You're exposed to thousands of images every day of who you should be, what you should want, how you should look, how your life should feel. But no one tells you how to listen to yourself. No one teaches you how to ask, what do I value? What kind of life feels true to me? The result? A generation that is overstimulated, but deeply underdeveloped. A society full of people who are constantly reacting, but rarely reflecting. Imagine a teenager. She scrolls for hours, her brain flooded with noise, dopamine, and comparisons. Her sense of self becomes fragmented, chased by trends, defined by likes. She doesn't know who she is, only who she's supposed to be. This is how identity erodes, not in one sudden moment, but through 1,000 quiet compromises. And as you grow older, the pattern continues. You work a job that drains you. You maintain relationships that hollow you. You chase goals that impress others, but mean nothing to your soul. You meet expectations. You stay productive. You survive. But somewhere along the way, you misplace the blueprint of your own soul. Jung saw this as a collective illness, not just individual anxiety, but cultural alienation. Because a person disconnected from their inner world is much easier to control. They're more compliant, more predictable, more profitable. If you feel disconnected, it's not because you're weak. It's because you've been shaped to ignore yourself and applaud the version of you that fits best into the machine. This is the deeper tragedy. A world that tells you to be everything except yourself. And when you finally collapse under the weight of pretending, when the anxiety becomes unbearable, when the numbness takes over, what does society offer? More distraction, more labels, more ways to silence your truth. Jung warned that true healing only begins when we confront the environment that conditioned us. When we ask, what parts of myself were I told to hide in order to be loved? What dreams did I abandon just to be accepted? It's not an easy question, because it requires admitting that much of your life may have been lived in response to fear, not freedom. But this is the doorway. This is the moment when healing begins, not by becoming someone better, but by becoming someone real. Because you cannot build an authentic life on top of artificial expectations. You must go back, reclaim what was lost, rescue the parts of yourself that were pushed aside. The world wants you to keep performing, to keep producing, to stay small, agreeable, distracted. But somewhere inside, you know that's not who you are. There's a voice in you that's tired of pretending, a part that longs for stillness, for meaning, for truth. And at some point, you realize the cost of staying in the mold is far greater than the risk of stepping out of it. Because if you live your whole life as a mirror to the world, your soul may die without ever being seen. And then one day, you don't even recognize yourself anymore. You don't know what you feel, what you want, or what really matters. You only know one thing. You've become who you were told to be, not who you truly are. That's where Jung's greatest insight comes in. He called it individuation, the process of becoming whole. Let's explore that next. There comes a point in life when pretending is no longer sustainable, when the roles you've played start to feel like cages, when even your own reflection feels unfamiliar. This is what Carl Jung called the beginning of individuation, the deep psychological journey of becoming whole. Jung didn't define healing as becoming better, more polished, or more productive. He defined it as becoming more complete, more you. Individuation means stepping out of the life that was handed to you and into the life that was always waiting beneath the surface. It is the path from the false self, the one shaped by culture, family, and fear, back to the true self. But this path isn't straight, and it's never easy. To individuate, you must confront everything you've suppressed, the impulses, memories, and truths you were taught to hide. Jung called this material the personal unconscious. It's not just trauma, it's also your lost potential, your authentic desire, your forgotten voice, and within it, perhaps the most important part of all, the shadow. The shadow is the side of you that was labeled unacceptable, the anger you weren't allowed to express, the envy you were told to suppress, the instinct that made others uncomfortable. You buried it to fit in. But buried doesn't mean gone. In fact, Jung warned that what we reject internally gains power in the dark. He wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Your shadow doesn't disappear through willpower. It integrates through awareness. And this is not about indulging your darker impulses. It's about recognizing them, owning them, and reintegrating the energy they hold. Because when you repress the shadow, you don't become more pure. You become more fractured. Individuation is the opposite of that. It's the reintegration of the lost parts. It's psychic reconciliation. You don't become someone new. You reclaim who you've always been, beneath the noise. And the unconscious often speaks in symbols, not words. It shows up in dreams, in repeating emotional patterns, in spontaneous reactions that feel irrational, but carry a deeper logic. Let's say you've had the same dream again and again. a stranger standing at your door. You never open it, but they never leave. This is not just imagery, it's a message. That figure might be an archetype, a symbol of something disowned, something waiting to be let in. Jung believed dreams weren't meaningless. They were coded language from the soul. Your job is to learn how to listen. One simple place to start: keep a dream journal. Each morning, write down anything you remember, even fragments. And beyond dreams, pay attention to emotional spikes. What triggers you? What situations drain or energize you? These are psychological breadcrumbs, clues to parts of you that want to be seen. Individuation is a lifelong process, but it doesn't have to be mystical. It can begin with a single choice: to stop escaping yourself, to pause the performance, to turn inward, to ask not just, "What should I do?" but "What part of me have I forgotten?" Because the longer you run from yourself, the louder the symptoms will become. But the moment you begin to turn toward what you've abandoned, the pain begins to shift. It doesn't vanish, but it transforms. From punishment into guidance, from anxiety into direction, from disconnection into clarity. And that's the point. Individuation is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. It's about remembering what the world taught you to forget. Because while the world tells you to perform, Jung tells you to awaken, not to what others expect, but to who you actually are. But there is something more dangerous than pain, something more paralyzing than sadness. It is the quiet numbness of a life lived on autopilot, a soul no longer wounded, but anesthetized. Let's talk about that next. We live in an age of comfort, but not of meaning. Never before has humanity had such access to convenience, information, or entertainment. And yet, rarely have we felt so empty. This is the paradox of modern life. We are surrounded by abundance, but starving for purpose. Carl Jung recognized this long before it became obvious. He observed that much of modern psychological suffering, anxiety, depression, burnout, is not caused by external events, but by a deep inner void, a lack of meaning, a lack of why. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, echoed the same truth. He said, "If we have a why to live, we can bear almost anyhow. But without a why, even comfort becomes unbearable. Even success feels hollow." And that's what we're seeing now. Not a crisis of capability, but a crisis of direction. People are not just tired from doing too much. They're tired from doing things that don't matter. Busy schedules, endless notifications, productivity hacks. Yet beneath it all, there's a silence no one wants to face. Let me tell you a story. A man in his 40s, well paid, well respected, married, 2 kids, a house in the suburbs. From the outside, everything looked right. But every morning, he woke up with a sense of dread. Not panik, not fear, just a slow, constant erosion of enthusiasm. Then one day, something broke. He took a leave of absence. Without knowing what came next, he enrolled in a sculpting class. For the first time in decades, he felt alive again. Not because it made sense, but because it felt real. He wasn't escaping work. He was returning to himself. You see, meaning isn't something you find in a book or a job title. It's not a slogan, a salary, or a 5-year plan. Meaning is discovered when your outer life begins to reflect your inner truth. And that can only happen when you stop running. But we live in a culture designed to keep us running. We're flooded with distractions, We're trained to perform, produce, and please. We've become experts at staying busy, but novices at being present. We chase recognition, accumulate things, check boxes, but never stop to ask, why am I doing any of this? Does any of it feel like mine? This is the real pandemic, not disease. But disconnexion. Jung warned that without connection to the self, without alignment with your deeper nature, life becomes mechanical. You get through the day, but you're not really in it. So what do? We start small with 3 questions. Questions that seem simple, but will shake you if you answer them honestly. What part of my life feels fake? When do I feel most like myself? What would I be doing if I stopped trying to impress anyone? Write them down. Sit with them. Let them disrupt you, because that disruption is where meaning begins. You don't need to blow up your life tomorrow, but you do need to stop ignoring the quiet voice that says, this isn't it. Meaning isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. Without it, even the best circumstances feel flat. But with it, even challenge becomes bearable. Even suffering becomes sacred. You don't have to know your purpose all at once, but you do need to make space for it to find you. Because the longer you live out of alignment, the more your soul will whisper, then shout, then shut down. And if you still haven't found your sense of meaning, it may be because you've been searching in all the wrong places. Not out there, but in here. The truth is, the answers you seek are not on the surface. They're buried deep in the unconscious. Let's go there next. The unconscious is not your enemy. It is not a dark pit filled with shame and trauma. It is the most honest part of you. The part that has recorded everything you were too afraid, too busy, or too conditioned to face. Carl Jung saw the unconscious not as a threat, but as a guide, a vast, symbolic, inner world that holds your forgotten truths, your unmet needs, your hidden strengths. He wrote, "What you do not bring to consciousness returns as fate." In other words, the things you avoid in yourself will eventually shape your life from the shadows. You think you keep sabotaging relationships, but maybe you're unconsciously terrified of being seen. You believe you're unlucky in your career, but maybe you fear what success might actually demand of you. You say you want peace, but cling to chaos because it's all you've ever known. The unconscious is like a locked room in your house. The more you avoid it, the more it defines how you live. You don't see it, but it moves your choices. It shapes your fears. It whispers behind every reaction you can't explain. And the irony? It's not trying to hurt you. It's trying to complete you. Jung believed that healing only begins when we turn inward, when we shine light on what we've buried. But how do you access a part of yourself that doesn't speak in words? You don't reason your way in. You feel your way in. You listen, not with logic, but with attention. The unconscious speaks through images, symbols, emotions, and dreams. Start small. Set aside 5 minutes each morning. Open a notebook and write anything, whatever comes to mind. Don't judge it. Don't edit it. Just follow the thread. This is called free writing. And over time, you'll start to notice patterns, recurring words, phrases, themes. That's your unconscious trying to surface. Another doorway is emotion, but not the kind we suppress, the kind we track. Instead of labeling a feeling as good or bad, ask, where do I feel this in my body? What triggered it? What might this emotion be pointing to beneath the surface? And then there's imagery. If a symbol keeps showing up in dreams, in memory, in random moments, don't dismiss it. Sit with it. Sketch it. Meditate on it. Jung believed that symbols are how the unconscious speaks when words are not enough. This isn't about overanalyzing everything. It's about becoming curious again. Curious about yourself. About the parts you've ignored, misunderstood, or labeled as irrational. Because here's the truth. As long as you remain unaware of what lives within you, you are not fully free. You are being driven by old pain, by ancient beliefs, by childhood defenses that no longer serve the adult you've become. But the moment you stop running, the moment you open that locked door inside, everything begins to change. Your anxiety becomes a message, not a monster. Your sadness becomes a teacher, not a failure. And your patterns, those cycles you thought you could never break, finally start to loosen. This is the process Jung called the expansion of consciousness, not self-improvement, not chasing perfection, but waking up to the full truth of who you are, shadow and light, memory and possibility, wound and wisdom. And through that process, you stop being a puppet of your past and start becoming the author of your future. Because if you don't know what lives inside you, it will keep making decisions for you from the dark. Now comes the hardest question of all. If the path to healing is clear, why do so few people walk it? Let's answer that next. At some point, every human being reaches a fork in the road. Do you keep running from yourself, hoping the noise will drown out the truth? Or do you stop, turn around, and face what you've been avoiding all along? It is not an easy choice, but it is yours. You can keep numbing, out-scrolling, reacting, pretending, or you can begin the slow, difficult, beautiful process of coming home to who you really are. Not the mask, not the persona, not the version of you the world told you to be. The real you, the one buried underneath the noise, waiting for permission to breathe again. And the truth is, no one is coming to give you that permission. Not your past, not your parents, not society. Only you can decide when enough is enough. So here is your first step. Write this sentence down and complete it with complete honesty. I refuse to keep living this way because let it come from the gut. Let it hurt if it needs to. Let it shake something loose, because that sentence, raw and unfiltered, might be the first true thing you've said to yourself in years. And remember this, if you do not claim your truth, the world will hand you a lie and call it a life. So you must choose comfort or clarity, noise or stillness, avoidance or awakening. Because once you've heard the truth, you cannot unhear it. And if you've made it this far, if you're still listening, then your path is no longer accidental. It is time to choose. And this time, let it be the version of you that never needed to hide in the first place. Comment below. What is the one truth about yourself you're ready to stop avoiding? Because awareness is the first step, and naming it out loud is how you begin to take your power back.